Welcome to the Trading with Venus podcast, where we help you establish strong trading habits, generate consistent profits, and create the lifestyle you desire for yourself and your family. Now your host, Raman Gill.
Welcome to Trading with Venus podcast, episode 22. I am your host, Raman Gill. Today I am very excited to welcome our special guest to the show, my friend Simon Smart. Simon is not a trader, but a coach who helps people create massive results across all areas of their lives. Simon believes that the results you experience in your life are not a consequence of your decision or action, but instead the inevitable outcome of who you are and who you build yourself into. Confidence, conviction, connection, and capacity, plus the ability to maintain resilience, are the drivers of full spectrum of success. At age 21, Simon turned his back on a legal career to live in Japan, deepening his understanding and practice of old combat martial arts, a journey that ultimately led him through years of training in meditation, body-mind integration, and warriorship. After years of training U.S. soldiers, Simon met his wife and moved to the United States full-time in 2008. After spending 2 years working with violent crime and sex crime victims, this led to a new focus on sales, marketing, consulting, and winning awards in the corporate world. Hi, Simon. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Raman. I am really excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for joining us. And to start things off, tell us a bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I'm from Scotland originally, live here in Tucson, Arizona these days. My career, my journey has been long and looping, as you've probably heard. I grew up all over the world, got a law degree from the University of Edinburgh, and then really important turning point in my life, I graduated, went to a graduation party, and looked around the party, and the sound, people's voices kind of tuned down, the music turned down, and I looked around and I realized that this career that I've been planning for years wasn't really what I wanted. And I made a very hard turn in my life, and I actually went out to Japan. And there was an old man out there, a martial arts practitioner, Masaki Hatsumi, who I'd been reading his books for years and years and years as a kid. And I had the opportunity to go out there and train and study with him for about just over 4 years. And when I came back, I actually ended up coming to the U.S. and training American soldiers who were really on the cusp of deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan. And I taught them a lot about how to survive in very high-stress environments when things are not going your way. And I'm sure your audience has never been in that kind of position before, right? But that was what I did for a long time. And then I kind of took a journey into business, and I got into sales and marketing and consulting and did pretty well in that arena for a long time. And then one day, I, out of nowhere, was impacted by massive anxiety, depression, to the point that it became very difficult to function. I nearly destroyed my relationship with my wife. And that was the moment in my life where I really had to kind of take a step back and look very hard at what I was doing, what I was forgetting in terms of my self-management, my self-care, and really, what did I have to do to get back in line with my full potential as a human being, as a man, as a business person. And that really set me on a journey to what I do now, Raman. I run a program called Warrior Protocol, where I take a lot of those concepts I learned from martial arts, from meditation, from training soldiers, and I bring them to the entrepreneur business community. I have an amazing group of guys who train with me online, who come down here to Tucson for physical events, and we build in them something which I call resiliency. And I'm sure we'll talk more about this in this podcast, but resiliency is all about how do you perform at your very best under extremely high-pressure situations. So I just want to give as a caveat, I have no background in Forex trading. Everyone listening to this is an absolute expert compared to me, but I've met very few industries where I can provide value in terms of helping people perform better and get better results.
Thank you, Simon, for sharing that with us. And one of the things I really appreciate you sharing is your personal struggles, stuff that you went through. And I find a lot of time in this industry, we don't really talk about the bad stuff. We always want to sugarcoat everything, and we never talk about, the bad trades that we take or bad habits and bad things that we get into. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because
I'm sure a lot of our listeners can really relate to this, because when we lose trades, we do go through that stuff, and especially if you're on a losing streak, going into depression and feeling bad and having anxiety about entering trades is a reality for us. So thank you for sharing that.
No problem. I know trading can be an absolute emotional roller coaster. For a while, when I lived in London, a lot of my clients were investors or traders of some type down at Canary Wharf. And a massive majority of them, especially the guys, were pretty successful financially, but equally they were alcoholics, or they were doing drugs, or they were addicted to porn, and they were not, for the most part, able to function because nobody had ever coached them on how to deal with the downside of the industry.
Yes, absolutely. But stress does cause us to do a lot of other things that, if you really looked at ourselves, we would say, I'm not the type of person who would do something like that. But when the reality hits, we end up doing stuff like that. So tell us, how can we apply these concepts to our day-to-day life as traders? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it's such a great question, Raman. Thanks very much. Let me talk about resiliency a little bit. That's what I mentioned a few minutes ago. Resiliency is this idea that you are able to be bulletproof, you are able to walk into high-stress environments, whatever that happens to look like, in a way that you've already set yourself up to be as successful as possible. So this can be a massive conversation, but I really break building resiliency into two phases. One is the phase of what can we do before we go into that high-stress situation, and for the purposes of this podcast, let's talk about that as our trading situation, because as you know, trading some days can be great and some days it can be horrific, and so you really want to set yourself up to be as successful as possible. So what can you do ahead of time, and then what can you do in the moment, especially when things start to get turned on their head, to make sure that you can continue to function as efficiently as possible. So when I start looking at what can people do to begin to prepare themselves for those high-stress situations, I really believe that as a society today, we have become one of the softest societies that has ever existed. Does that make sense? So we as a people have become a little bit soft, and most of us, without training, aren't good at dealing with stress. So obviously, when you take a step back to the biology and the physiology of who we are, we're not designed to be under stress for long periods of time. We're designed to be under stress once in a while, and we have very specific hormonal and chemical reactions to stress, which are supposed to be useful. So, for example, cortisol is a chemical which is released in our bodies and our brains when we're under stress, and it does some really cool things when you're in danger. So cortisol, for example, causes you to it causes your blood to clot if you get cut. But of course, when we're trading, we're not getting cut. We're under a totally different kind of stress that the body was never really designed for. So you have to understand that these things are going on in our bodies, whether or not we want them to or not. So when we train ourselves for stress, what we're doing is we're specifically putting ourselves in stressful positions ahead of time so we can learn how to adapt to it. So this is pretty extreme, but a lot of the guys that I train, they do things like they take freezing cold showers every morning, because when you do something like that, the rest of the day is just a little bit easier. And by putting ourselves under stress, we kind of build this resiliency into ourselves where we can say, hey, whatever the day throws at me, it's not going to be as difficult as what I just put myself into voluntarily. And that looks different for different people. But whatever it is, if you have a really, really easy life most of the time and you're sitting on the sofa, eating chocolate, watching TV, and you've made your life incredibly comfortable, I can predict that when stress hits, you will not be successful as you could be at dealing with it. Does that make sense?
Yes, and actually it's interesting you mentioned cold showers, because growing up, that's exactly what I had to do. We used to take cold showers because there was no running hot water.
Right.
And to get hot water, you had to actually use, put it on stove and heat it up. And it was just too cumbersome. So by the time the entire family took a shower, it would just take forever. So we got used to, we would just go in, even in the dead of winter, we would take cold showers. And I agree, now living in Canada here, we have all the amenities, so I never have to take a cold shower, even in the even in the summer. So I feel like I am definitely turning soft.
It happens to everyone. I actually was working with a personal injury attorney recently who was in the airborne back in the day in the Army, very, very tough guy. And then he got a career as a personal injury attorney, did very well, spent 15 years basically sitting in his chair. And he does not have this same level of mental sharpness and mental resiliency that he used to. So it's really interesting when you kind of look at what am I doing in my life to make me, for want of a better word, tougher, so that when I deal with tough trades, I'm able to absorb it rather than being broken by it. So there's a bunch of other things that we can do in whatever career we're in, but trading specifically, to make sure that we are more resilient. So one of the things that I know a lot of people who are professionals struggle with, Raman, is the proper amount of sleep. And there's this thing that goes around, everyone should get 8 hours of sleep, and I truly believe that everyone is different. But it's important that each one of us knows how much sleep do I realistically need, not just to be able to wake up with some energy, but to be able to function with the maximum level of cognitive ability that I need for what I'm doing. So let me share with you a study that the Army did a few years ago. I find this really, really fascinating. They took 4 different artillery units, and they made them fire artillery nonstop for 20 days. And what they did was each group had a different amount of sleep every night, and they measured at the end of 20 days how efficient they were in terms of rounds on target and how many rounds per minute they could fire. So what they found was that the first group got 7 hours of sleep a night, and after 20 days was firing at 98% efficiency. So they were still very, very, very good. The group that got 6 hours was down to 50% efficiency. The group that got 5 hours had fallen to 28% efficiency. And the group that got 4 hours sleep a night, like a lot of professionals try to do, 15% efficiency. So let's take that to trading. If you're not sleeping enough, I can guarantee that not only are you reacting to stress more than you need to, but you're missing chances, you're missing numbers, you're not being as observant and creative as you could be in your role, and you're not making money because you're not sleeping enough. So sleep is tremendously important, as is just taking care of your physical body. You know, we talked a little bit before the podcast, Raman, about morning routines, and I know that you have an amazing morning routine as far as getting ready to trade. One of the things I have all my people do when it comes to just life in general, whether that's spending the day with the kids or whether that's going to their workplace, doing their job as entrepreneurs, is I insist that every day they strengthen, work out their body in some way. So whether that's running or going to the gym or yoga, sometimes we forget in modern society, especially when we're just staring at a computer screen every single day, that we are very, very physical beings, and our brain is completely connected to our bodies, and if our bodies are not in good shape, we don't think and we don't act as clearly as we need to. So it's absolutely important to exercise, work out, breathe deeply, pump blood every single day. And then, of course, nutrition. You know, I truly believe that if somebody's trading and eating a ton of sugar every day, they're essentially robbing themselves of results, because sugar, we all know, clouds your thinking, creates all kinds of chemicals in the brain that stop you being as fast and as sharp as you need to be. Most people have had the experience of eating something sugary and then half falling asleep afterwards. So it drives me crazy when I see somebody who's looking for results in their lives eating in a way that absolutely gets in the way of the results.
Actually, Simon, it reminds me of a conversation I had with a professional trader who I had hired as a mentor a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was, we didn't have any kids. It was just my husband and I had sold my business, and I just wanted to trade. I was trading part-time before, so I just wanted to trade full-time. And because I had so much time on my hands, I was trading all hours of the day. Mm. I would sleep with my laptop beside my bed. I just had trades going on at all crazy hours. And first thing he told me to do was shut down my computer and start getting some sleep. And after that, he actually fixed a lot of things, and most of those things were not around Forex trading, because he really wasn't a Forex trader, but he talked about, taking my supplements, making sure I'm getting some exercise, things that you just mentioned. So it is so imperative that we as traders do that, and I'm so glad you're actually mentioning that, because we don't talk about that often enough.
That's so interesting. As you're saying that, Raman, what I was realizing and reminding myself of is that whatever the career, looking at trading, the skills are not that hard to learn. I mean, there's the basic things that you need to know to be a good trader. But then what is it that separates great traders from average traders? I truly believe that it's things outside of the trading environment which they've got nailed down. So, I was thinking about, one of the reasons in the military that it's really important to shell your enemy's base all night is to keep them essentially up and busy and doing their job all hours so they never rest. And, of course, like you say, the ability to sit down at a trading table is open 24 hours a day. And I'm sure the temptation is there for a lot of your listeners to be ready to jump into a trade at any time. And there's a couple of consequences to that. One is that if you're not doing everything you need to do in your routine before you trade and you're just jumping in unprepared, your chances of success over a long enough time frame are going to start to drop radically. And then, of course, there's this thing that happens to us when we're constantly in our jobs. We're never not in our jobs. So if you're ready to jump into a trade any hour of the day, what happened to the rest of your life? How present are you being with your kids? How present are you being with your significant other, your husband or your wife? And all those things are going to play into your ability to actually do your job when it's time to do your job. So I would highly recommend that anyone who's trading gets serious about what they're doing. I'm sure it's easy to play and it's easy to play around in the markets, but if you are somebody who's in this for the long term, you have to get serious, you have to treat yourself as a professional, and you have to have business hours. And your business hours are when you trade, and when you're outside of business hours, you have to develop the discipline to not trade because you're closed. And when you're closed, that's a time for studying, learning, building your relationships with other people, taking care of your body, doing meditation, journaling, spirituality, and just having fun, whatever it happens to be. And when you work all those other things into your life in a really high quality way, I can guarantee you that over time your trading will improve.
Actually, that's absolutely true. I find I trade the best when I'm having the most fun in my life.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it's a way to fill your bucket. You kind of deplete, and it's when you're in this focus state, you deplete your mental resilience, and then you need to step away from your desk and go fill that up to come back. And I find family time, going out with friends, and just doing other stuff, just a physical activity that you mentioned, is just one way to do that. So that's great.
That's so true. And when your back's against the wall and life is going badly, let's say you're trying to pay your rent with your trading, or you're having arguments with your wife or husband every day, again, your trading is going to be way harder because most of your mind is not going to be in play. Most of your mind is not going to be available to you to do what you're trying to do. So, that kind of ties into another part of this conversation, Raman. I see this with all kinds of business people. I see it, I'm going to be honest, primarily with guys. So this is the game that a lot of us as men in business tend to run. I'm sure this also applies to a lot of the women who are trading. But we do this thing where we become absolutely obsessed with our business or our trading. We are head in the computer all the time. Even when we're not working, we're thinking about it. And what happens is our partner comes to us and says, "Hey, honey, I'm starting to feel like your trading is more important than I am, and more important than our marriage is, and more important than our kids are." And of course, the guy in this case will say, "Well, honey, you're more important to me, but I'm working this hard in my business, in my trading for you guys. Do you get it?" And trying to intellectualize the response like that just doesn't work. She's not going to feel like it's true. So one of the things that's absolutely vital, I believe, for all people in business is that when you're not working, you must set aside quality time for the other people in your life. Because when you don't, and life becomes a series of marriage-related arguments, guess what? When you go back into your business hours, when you go back into your trading, half of your mind is going to be focused on the argument. And again, now you're half a trader. And just like going into battle with half a soldier, you're going to lose every single time.
So true. So right on this topic as well, there's another thing that we come up against, which is getting out of a losing streak. So let's say, and this is normal. This is a normal part of trading. We go on winning streaks, we go on losing streaks. So what do you do when your back is against the wall and you are literally doing that? You're trading for your rent money and you need to pay your bills, but that stress causes you to lose even more. So can you talk about how someone can come out of that situation? What can they do?
That's a great question. And I'm going to probably give an answer that might not be what you'd expect. I truly believe that if somebody's in business or they're trading and literally the finances are so tight that they can't pay the mortgage that month, it's time to walk away from trading and go get a job and go do something just to take the pressure off. Because whenever you're trading, and it's literally like there's so much pressure on your body you can't even breathe and find space to think, you're not going to win. So there are times in life when even though your heart and soul might be in one thing, you have to take a little extension maneuver and walk away and go find an easier way to just make the money you need to be able to breathe and create space in your life. Now, if you can't do that, there's a few things that you're going to have to do. And one is you're going to have to become very, very, very good at state management. So again, if you go into a trade and your mind and your heart and your body are not set up for success, that's not the way to do it. So again, you need to be sleeping, exercising, doing all the right nutrition, taking care of everything outside of that in your life. And then you need to make sure that when you go into your trading scenario, your mind is positive, you're in a position where all the emotional stress of your life is pushed aside for that period of time that you're in the trades. And what you have to be very, very good at is observing when the emotion or the stress or the fear starts to come back in. And this is exactly the same if you're a successful trader, but the market, which is the one thing, of course, that none of us can control, starts to not go the way that you hope. You have to be able to notice when you start to become on tilt. And I think, Raman, you and I talked about this a long time ago. In poker players are very, very good at noticing what they call being on tilt, which is where they move away from being calm and just calculating the numbers to a place where, let's say, they lost a hand or they won a hand. It can go either way, but the emotions are now in play. They want to prove themselves. They feel like the last hand was bad, so this hand should be good. And of course, that doesn't make sense, statistically. But it's so important to be able to notice when your emotions are in play and either be able to take a breath and come back to center, come back to zero, or just be able to walk away from the computer. Just be able to shut it down and say, I am not in a state to do this right now. I got to walk away and get myself back in state. And I truly believe in any business, that ability to say, hey, I'm not in the right place to do this right now, I'm walking away, is the ultimate example of maturity.
You know what, I have learned that over the years that I've been in a trader, when I'm mentally not in the game, when I wake up in the morning and I think to myself, oh, I shouldn't trade today, that is a signal that I should walk away.
Absolutely.
And being human, I have fought against that. I've fought against that in the sense that I would come to my desk and say, let me just do my morning analysis, and then I'll walk away. And of course, you sit down at the desk, you go through the analysis, and you get into a trade. And part of that is because you're not in the right mental state to begin with. And every single time I have done that, and this is 100% of the time, I have lost money that day.
I am totally unsurprised. Yeah, I think if you wake up and you feel in your body and your heart and your mind that you're not the right person to trade that day, the first thing you need to do is say, okay, how do I get myself back into a place where I can successfully trade? And that's not about trading. That's about, do I need to call someone? Is there something in my life that I haven't taken care of that's pulling on my energy, that's dragging on me? Do I need to eat something? Do I need to go for a run? Whatever it happens to be. Your first priority is get back into the right place. And if you can, you're absolutely right. Today, that means that is not a trading day that day. That's a day off. And your mission for that day is to make sure that the following day, you're back.
Yes, absolutely. And, one of the nice things about being a trader is having that flexibility of walking away. You don't have to come and trade every single day because market will be there tomorrow. There will be trades the next day. It's not like you have missed this huge opportunity where you will never be able to make money again or, you won't be able to get that back. I had a conversation with one of my students this morning. He made, nice 50 pips this morning and then told him to take a day off, and later we had a nice we're waiting for FOMC this afternoon. And so anyways, the market had a nice run down and I caught nice 80 pips in that. And he was complaining that I didn't call that trade for him. But it's like, well, why? Once you've made the profit, just walk away, and have that go back to your life and do the things that replenish you so you can come back prepared next day to trade even better.
Yeah, and I think if you can't do that, Raman, I'm sure you'd agree with this, you may not be cut out for trading.
I agree. I think one of the topics I've talked about in the podcast is, are you the right person to trade? And this is one of the traits where you are not able to walk away from it. You shouldn't be trading. And the same thing you mentioned, if you're trading for rent money, you shouldn't be trading.
Yep. Yeah, it's easy to get caught in it, isn't it? But when you're able to take a step back and say, am I the person? And that actually ties me in a really good point I'd want to make, Raman. I'm a massive fan of meditation, and it's such a great way to get your brain and your body in a place where you can be very, very efficient. It creates more working memory, better problem solving. But I'm also a big fan of journaling. And if I was coaching somebody who was trading, one of the things that I would absolutely have them do is ask one question to themselves. And that question is, who do I need to become to be a better trader? And I like that question because a lot of people are going to say, how do I become a better trader? What tactics, strategies, what do I have to learn to be a better trader? And you have to do that as well. But when you ask the question of who do I need to be a better trader, it forces you to look at yourself and your lifestyle and your values and how you operate. And that's what you've got to change. When you change those things and make yourself into a person who is naturally better at trading and everything else in life, I guarantee you that your ability to trade will trend upwards. And so where journaling comes into that is, that's something to write down on a piece of paper and really figure out, what do I need to take care of? Do I need to build a better relationship with my parents? Do I need to start volunteering somewhere? All these things can play into who we are and change us. And ultimately, this is one of the facts of life that nobody ever wants to face, Raman. If you want to be successful, it's not about doing things. It's about becoming a person who's successful. It's about changing who you are. And changing who you are is one of the hardest things in life, but it's also one of the most profitable things you can ever do.
I absolutely agree, Simon. Okay, so is there anything else you would like to add to what we have talked about?
Oh, absolutely. As long as this is good value for your people. One of the things that I've known traders in my time. I've seen how they operate. A lot of traders today are trading at home, and kind of as an aside, right now I'm on my computer, obviously with you. I'm standing up, and the reason I'm standing up is because I know that I hold a better conversation standing up than sitting down. I've paid attention to that. I'm also standing right now on an acupressure mat, which is kind of like a bed of nails, and it hurts a little bit. And I know this is kind of weird to tell you on the podcast, but I want to illustrate something. When I'm standing on this, I'm more aware of my body and my breathing, and when I'm in that place, I'm able to have a better conversation. I'm more creative. So I've set myself up with an office environment that allows me to work at my maximum efficiency. So when you're trading at home, I truly believe that you have to do a couple of things. You want to set up your office in a way which is clean and organized. And again, if your office is a total mess, take care of that before you trade, because we as humans are affected by our environment. Somebody told me years ago that environment is stronger than willpower, and I think that is absolutely true. So cleaning up your environment is important. A lot of people trade in their pajamas. When I worked from home years ago, I tried working in my pajamas and it was okay. But if I put on a pair of slacks and a shirt, I suddenly found a different part of me came out that was better on the phone. So I think it's important when you're working at home to try playing with all these different variables to figure out, again, what makes you the person that's better at trading, what puts you in a better state. And one thing that I wanted to add here is how important nutrition is. So when I went into that time of depression in my life, I was very successful in my business. I mean, the money was good, everything was good. Primarily it's because I wasn't taking care of my nutrition. I was on the road a lot, and I just wasn't getting certain things. So I'm a massive fan of spending at least a month journaling everything you eat and how you feel. And what you might magically discover is that the days when you trade well, your nutrition was set up a certain way. And the days that you traded badly, your nutrition was different. And again, the more self-study you can do, the more you can know yourself, the better you can trade. Because it's all about understanding what is it in your life you can control and what can you not control. You can't ever control the market, but you can absolutely control yourself and how you show up in the marketplace to do your job. And the more you dial that in, I guarantee you, the more money you will make with less stress in your life.
So true, Simon. Now you've got me standing up here too.
Result.
Actually, you know what? A very important point, because yesterday I was getting to that point because I was getting overwhelmed, and the reason was we have recently moved, and I am still in the process of setting up my office, and my office looked like I needed to just put some papers away and clean it up a bit. So I took a whole day to clean up my office, and this morning I was so focused that I saw the trade, I executed, and it turned out to be a great day. So that's right there, that proves your point. So thank you for sharing that.
My pleasure.
So now, in closing, Simon, tell us, how can we get a hold of you if someone wanted to reach you?
I'm on Facebook a lot, Simon Smart, pretty easy to find. And the best way to get in touch with me is I have a website called warriorprotocol.com. And you can reach me through there, or simon@warriorprotocol.com. I also am giving away a free course right now, Raman, which is designed primarily for men who want to be able to work at their best and truly show up as a warrior in their lives, someone who excels physically, emotionally, in relationships, in business, whatever area of life. However, having said that, I've also had a number of women who've gone through the course and got a lot of value for it. And that's available for free at warriorprotocol.com/get-warrior-edge. Or you can just go to Warrior Protocol and there's a link there.
Okay, sounds great, Simon. I will make sure I put a link in the show notes to that page, so the listeners can go and take a look at it.
Perfect.
Again, thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts with us, and sharing your experiences, being vulnerable with us, and opening up some of the things that most people don't want to talk about, and also sharing your experiences and helping us become better traders.
Oh, my pleasure, Raman. I think you're doing a great job. I love what you're doing as far as supporting people. And I know there are thousands of people out there who are trying to make their lives better, trying to provide for themselves and their families, and just build a better life. And, always whatever I can do to support those people in getting there, I'm more than happy to do. So thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks again.
We were just talking to Simon, who shared with us strategies on how to be our best so we can perform at the highest level while enjoying our life with those we love. You can find the show notes for this episode at tradingwithvenus.com podcast page, episode 22. Thank you once again for sharing this time with me. I really appreciate you. Have a great trading week. I will see you next week.
If you want consistency in your trading, we invite you to join our daily market analysis calls, where we provide the levels to find the best entries and targets on an intraday basis. For a 1-week free trial, please visit www.tradingwithvenus.com. Thanks for joining us today. With much gratitude, your show host, Raman Gill.